All right, this one is about Eugene Stoner and the Arsenal of Democracy. Now, obviously, I've been talking about how we probably should be making toy guns that look like real military weapons. Um, but I do want to stop and talk about Eugene Stoner. This is the guy who invented the M16. Well, rather the AR-15, which was modified to have the full auto trigger grouping as the M16. Um, this was not the only gun that he had taken part of. He had been involved since right at the very beginning of the AR projects. That's AR stands for Armalite, not assault rifle. AR-15 is the two-letter designation for the Armalite Corporation, who primarily at the time worked with aircraft. Um, Eugene Stoner was involved in nearly every major firearms development in what are called democratic nations in the last 50 plus years. The reason for this is because not because of the AR-15 slash M16 variant, but because of his legacy of rifles both before and after that. When you look at the AR-10, that's the M16 version that came out first. The Germans came out with an intermediate round. It wasn't a handgun round, but it wasn't a rifle round. It was somewhere in between. It was called the Kurz round. And the AK-47 round is based off of the German Kurz round. Also, the 7.62 NATO or the 223 NATO and 7.62 NATO both are actually based on the Kurz round. It's like I said, it's supposed to be an intermediate cartridge. Not quite a rifle, but not quite a handgun. Somewhere in between. Um, he made a lot of other developments, and there's a lot of projects that he was working on that he doesn't necessarily get credit for, like the AR-18. That was another Eugene Stoner design. Um, but the AR-18 was basically he thought, well, if I was in a third world country and I didn't have access to all the wonderful technology that I have in order to make the M16 style of rifle, how would I build it? And that's where the AR-18 come in. They have a civilian version called the AR-180. The zero on the end is a denotation of it being a civilian version, semi-auto. The AR-180B is one that came out in I want to say in the late 90s, and it was a variant. It was meant as a civilian mock-up of it, basically, but it had a lot of polymers in it, and then there was a lot of stuff that just looked like it was polymer, looked like it was cheap plastic, so people didn't really want to buy it, which is why it's hilarious that people would want to take an M16 and take all of the stuff off of it and put a bunch of plastic stuff on it. Or that they would want to take one of these BB guns that's all plastic and they want to spend thousands of dollars to get one that looks realistic. There are air guns that cost $1,700 that are made in South Korea, and the reason they cost $1,700 is because it is nearly indistinguishable from an actual M16 unless you completely disassemble it and look at the bolt face. Meanwhile, you can walk to Cabela's and you can buy an actual functioning AR-15 that fires real bullets for about $500 to $600. Yeah, it does seem kind of weird to me. But then again, they're going to be going around shooting each other with these airsoft pistols. And if you go running around shooting each other with an actual bullet, well, law enforcement is not going to be too happy with it. Eugene Stoner also invented the Stoner 63 machine gun or machine gun system. It can be used as a light, heavy, or medium machine gun. And it was marketed or it was used almost exclusively by United States Navy SEALs in Vietnam. Matter of fact, they still have the Stoner 63 in use today in some branches of military service. But the reason that Eugene Stoner had such an impact on all of these, they call them Western developments. You're either East or West. Russia is considered East, America is considered West. China is considered East, Australia is actually considered West. Um, Japan is considered East. Canada is considered West. They're what, less than 300 miles from each other? They're not that far apart. Well, actually, I guess they would be closer to Japan, or would be closer to Alaska, wouldn't they? But Eugene Stoner didn't just have an impact on Western arms, he also had an impact on Eastern arms. But what we're talking about right now is the Western impact, and I want you to take a look at some service rifles. The British EM2 was the very first bullpup rifle design ever adopted as a main battle rifle for frontline service. It was adopted by the British, and I want to say it was their main service rifle for a couple of years. It wasn't very long. Then they had the L3A1, and I'm actually going to look that up because I might be wrong about that. L3A1. Oh, yeah, that doesn't work. That's why I got this. L3A1. And I believe it's in 7.62. It certainly is. And then later on, the L3A1 was designated, I want to say, the SAR 80. Let's see, SAR 80 rifle. Is that right? Nope, it is not a SAR rifle. But the SAR rifle looks very similar to an AR 180. From Singapore. Oh, yes, very much so. It looks like it's got components from the AR 180 and also some different designs from H&K. And it looks like the receiver group is, I don't know, is that a PPSH maybe? But anyway, the one that they have now is um, basically it's a bullpup, just like the EM2. But the thing about it is that all of these different companies that have all of these different bullpup rifles now, because the EM2 didn't stick around long. The British later on, and so did the French, adopted bullpups, of course, and they all have the same basic function. They have the the Armalite AR-80 bolt carrier group. That's used in all of the major Western countries of the world. All have battle rifles that have some variant of the AR-18 bolt or the M16 bolt, both designed by Eugene Stoner. You basically, in the Western world, you've got one or the other. And there's a lot of little intermediate, companies that have lots of little ideas. And there's lots of smaller countries that have small production runs of different ideas. And, then you end up with a lot of these countries that, when they buy a rifle, they're not going to buy, two or 300,000 of them at a time. They're going to buy 20 or 30 test rifles of this type and 20 or 30 test rifles of that type. And they'll try to buy mostly test rifles that have the same caliber of bullet or the same exact bullet, actually. You want the casing and everything so that it is interchangeable. So we do have a lot of countries in the world that are third world countries that actually have completely different firearms than all of the major countries in America or in the world. If you have a rifle that's based on the AR-10, which is actually a 308 Winchester, or based on the M16, which is basically a 223 Remington. It's just, you know what? I don't want to kill that fucking spider, but god damn it, now he's in my fucking computer. Oh, I like spiders, I do. I don't like brown recluses crawling around all over the place, though. Where was I at? Eugene Stoner. Yes. Um, the locking system on a lot of these rifles, it's the same thing. It's just like with a bolt action rifle. It locks into a groove and prevents it from traveling backwards. So it doesn't matter if it's a three lug like on a Barrett M82A1 50 caliber or a Serbu 50 caliber, or if it's on a M16 and 223 Remington, or if it's in an AK-47 in 7.62 by 39 millimeter, or it really doesn't matter. It's still a lock, a rotating lock. A lot of older rifles, the ones that we had that were blowback operated, had like toggle locks and roller locks and a lot of other really stupid shit that puts on excessive machine hours and doesn't do anything but make the thing more fucking complicated. One of the things that we learned about the Thompson is that we didn't have to have 18 different parts that were involved in the original uh, bolt section. I mean, there's a bunch of parts there we didn't need. The difference between the rifle working just as fine with those parts or without them was a matter of 2 or 3 pounds on the recoil spring. So I mean, really, all they had to do was stretch out the recoil spring a little bit, put it back in the gun, and you've got 18 parts that you no longer need. With the Stoner design, it did the same thing as the AK-47, and we like to pretend that they're different because we don't want to give the Russians any credit, because truly the AK-47 came out decades before the M16. In service, decades before the M16. But they do the same thing. They go forward. It's a bolt carrier group with the bolt in it. The bolt is the part that locks into place, and the carrier group has a groove in it. And when it gets completely forward, it turns the bolt, and the bolt is locked in place. And then the gases push that bolt carrier back. When the bolt carrier is pushed back, it rotates that barrel lug or the the actual bolt itself so that it unlocks itself from the barrel lugs, and then it slides back with the rest of it. And it doesn't matter if it's the AK-47 or the AR-15 or the M16 or uh, the British bullpup or the French bullpup. They all use that same locking system. Um, the fact that all of the major nations of the world that use NATO caliber rounds, the fact that all of them use the AR-18 bolt, with the exception of the United States, is kind of funny. Because the AR-18 is, well, it's superior in every way, um, with the exception of the 11 ounces of additional weight. Um, Eugene Stoner, he is not one of my heroes. Like, his counterpart in Russia is Mikhail Kalashnikov, and Mikhail Kalashnikov was either twice or three times decorated as a hero of the Soviet Union. I don't consider gun designers heroes. I really don't. I consider the next door lady who took an ass beating to protect you, I consider her a hero. Heroes don't have to have guns, don't have to carry guns, and although I have some friends that, or some people that I do consider heroes that were in the military, it wasn't their military service that made them heroes to me. When it comes to your safety, you can't depend on the government. You need to stop asking. If you're not a rich white girl in Boulder, Colorado, they don't give a fuck about your goddamn opinion. So you might as well stop giving it. But at the same time, they're not contributing to you. You don't owe a goddamn thing to them. You do whatever you got to do to defend yourself at this point in time, because this has not been the United States of America. Well, in my lifetime, we the people, that's what made it America. That's what made this country great, not Donald Trump's fucking MAGA hat. Y'all know anything about the March of Concord? What do you Americans know about Lexington Green? You want to talk about how proud you are to be Americans and own firearms? You don't stop to process where that all come from, do you? We the people, we the United States of America, and the citizens within will not be subject to British rule. We will no longer be told by the rich what to do, think, and feel. We will no longer be hung and executed without representation. We will not have our livelihoods taken from us by rich people in a foreign land. Of course, now what do? We serve the rich while they parcel this country out to foreigners. I don't mean foreigners as in people who are born in foreign countries, although many of them are. I'm talking about people who do not share the same ideals as, well, the poor in the United States. We busted our ass for this country, same as you. We deserve a part of it. In many cases, we worked harder than you can fucking ever possibly imagine. But that doesn't register in your head because, well, you've always been too good for a fast food job. Oh, I get that. I totally get that. How when you have options and you have other things that you could be doing, yeah, fast food doesn't really seem like that great of a thing. Oh, why would I stoop myself so low as to serve other human beings? Mm, right? See what I'm getting at here? So we got this thing called democracy, and it's supposed to work, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it work? Because we don't have an informed populace. You just lie to them, use the media to do it, and people will eat it up and do all sorts of fucked up shit. The Romans had it down to an art, bread and fucking circuses. All of our modern football stadiums are based off of what? The Colosseum in Rome. The Colosseum wasn't even named the Colosseum when it first came out. It was the Flavian Amphitheater. Now, why was it called the Flavian Amphitheater? Because of Emperor Flavius, the guy it was named after, the guy who commissioned it. Your football stadium is the same damn thing. We got all this shit going on. You guys want to argue about fucking stupid shit, and then you sit down and watch football. Football is more important than I am, isn't it? Football is more important than Demetrius Shankling, isn't it? Football is more important than Tiber Hute, isn't it? Football. Football is more important than Natalie Marie Bollinger, isn't it? Me, I like guns, obviously. I don't like real guns. Well, actually, that's not true. I love the mechanics. I just don't like what people do with them. If you got an AR-15, that is a hunting rifle. That is for hunting. It's not for killing other human beings. It's not a military rifle. The AR-15 was never a military rifle. It was not designed for assaulting people. But you're a fucking idiot. You want to bitch about how you don't have your First Amendment rights, but you don't exercise your Second Amendment rights. And you're an asshole to those who are exercising their Second Amendment rights. You're pissed off at them because you see them getting something. Yeah, these guys with the guns are getting what they want, and we without the guns are being ignored. When in history has it been any different? Samurai carried two swords. If you weren't a samurai, you'd get killed for that. Makes sense? But we're not talking about people who've got something like this as a training aid. We're not talking about somebody who's got something like this for shooting paper plates and stuff, and plastic bottles. We're talking about people who have real guns, actual firearms for killing. Now, is this arsenal of democracy? How democratic is it? How well does it help out we the people? If we're deciding whether or not we're doing good as a nation based on how the rich people are doing, they account for less than 1% of the population. Why do you give a fuck how they're doing? When you're out of toilet paper, are you going to talk to Bill Gates or are you talking to your neighbor? If you're out of toilet paper, you're a lot more likely to get a roll of toilet paper from your fucking neighbor than you are to even get a hold of Bill Gates. So why do you keep doing it that way? Why do you keep trying to go to the rich people and ask them to have mercy on you when you can just eat them? Sorry, that wasn't funny. It was funnier in my head, but when I said it, actually, it's fucking hilarious. Fuck rich people. Um, why are we listening to them? Why are we basing how we're doing as a nation off of how some spoiled fucking Kardashians feel? I don't give a fuck about the Kardashians. Here in Chapel, Nebraska, where people say, oh, stay away from the drama, I get to hear in Chapel, Nebraska what the Kardashians are up to. Who gives a fuck? That'd be like following Jackie fucking Martindale around because she's fucking hot. Like, yeah, she's hot, she's hot, she's hot. All of America should care what Jackie Martindale is doing because she's hot. No. If Jackie Martindale is your fucking neighbor, well then yeah, maybe you got a reason to give a shit about her. But if she married Sean P. Diddy motherfucking Combs, I wouldn't give a shit. If I saw Jackie and I was having a conversation with Jackie, it wouldn't matter to me if she was standing next to Lou Ferrigno or Mr. T. It wouldn't matter. Jackie is who Jackie is to me. But I know her in real life. If she's standing next to Sean P. Diddy Combs, I don't give a fuck what Sean P. Diddy Combs has to say about it. I don't know Sean P. Diddy motherfucking Combs. I know Jackie Martindale. But if something happened to Jackie, how many of you would give a shit? How many of you would even know that she exists? Now, her brother, Josh Martindale, yeah, you guys might know he exists. He married a Maxim magazine model. And a lot of you who are alive in the fucking around 2000 or so, you remember what Maxim magazine was. It was basically Playboy without the nudity. So Playboy is now basically Maxim magazine because as I hear it, Playboy doesn't have any nudity in it anymore. Well, cool. When it comes down to it, Eugene Stoner made a lot of impact, not just here in the United States. The major rifles of Britain, France, Germany, Australia, Canada are all based off of Eugene Stoner's designs. You say one person can't change the world. Bullshit. One person sneezing in a fucking restaurant right now can change the world. But then again, that's kind of bullshit too. You can't change something that's already happened, and you can't change something that hasn't happened. Those are just two inevitable facts. Our arsenal of democracy isn't so much the weapons, it's the people. And that's why rich people spend so much money and so much time in learning how to manipulate you. That's what advertising is, manipulating you into buying something. If you need an air rifle for self defense, I'm sorry, you're probably gonna fucking die. If someone comes here with an actual fucking gun, hell bent on killing me, if I point an air rifle at them, That's not going to do me any fucking good. Ted Bollinger doesn't care about the laws. Obviously. He keeps getting busted with meth and busted with guns, and I'm supposed to remain unarmed. Well, I'm not unarmed. You see this right here? No, it was not designed by Eugene Stoner. This is just pepper spray. But it's better than nothing, and it isn't going to kill somebody. Gandhi changed the world, and he didn't point a gun at anyone. Jesus changed the world, and he never, ever killed anybody. Well, I guess technically it was an assisted suicide, but whatever. My favorite heroes aren't the ones with guns. They're the ones without. When you paint somebody as a bad guy and make them a target for every fucking piece of shit cheese dick motherfucker out there, you are the bad guy. They're not the bad guy for sticking up for themselves. They're not the bad guy for yelling at the top of their lungs, "Hey, I'm being assaulted." Well, then you see there's all these things that you're told to do if this situation or that situation happens. And when that situation happens, these people you're told to go to, they're like, "Oh, well, that's not my job. You got to call these people." And then those people say, "Oh, it's not my job." What are we paying them for? We're paying them for what we think is their job, but we're not taking that money back when we realize they're not doing it. That's the problem with the Department of Health and Human Services and many of these other places, is that they have become too dependent upon robbing the American public, primarily the poor. Be safe.